Hello, my friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Party Nerds Popcast, coming to you live from an undisclosed secret location high in the Hollywoodland Hills area of Los Angeles, California. I am Richard Gabai, joined by my pal, the legend,
Robert Carradine.
Right, so we have a party nerd and a revenge nerd, and we are joined today by, honestly, not only one of my best friends, but a legend of cinema, probably the most prolific director in the history of Hollywood, the great Fred Olen Ray. Fred, great to see you, my friend.
Hello, Fred.
Great to see you guys. Hey.
Yeah,
hey,
man.
everybody.
So I want to, whenever I can, I want to tell my origin story with Fred Ray, right? So
Go for it.
I started working in the business, and I started to understand what was sort of going on through our mutual friend Dave Dakota. I did Nightmare Sisters with him. I wrote Deadly Embrace on a typewriter. It inspired me to write Assault of the Party Nerds and make that. And Dave and Fred shared office space, and I had never met Fred. And like Dave had the little office, and Fred had this giant office full of all this cool stuff, kind of like what you see behind him right now in his home. And Dave said, "Hey, do you want to meet Fred?" And I was like, "Whoa!" Because back in like the year before, I went to Hollywood Boulevard and saw Hollywood chainsaw hookers in the movie theater at the Egyptian. So I was going to meet a real movie director who made real movies that were in movie theaters. Like, I went to the movie theater and saw what I believe Maxim magazine rated as one of the greatest B movies of all time, Hollywood Chainsaw. So I was going to meet him, and so it was kind of scheduled, and I had just finished Assault of the Party Nerds. So I had one of those VHS tapes from the lab, like with no label on it or whatever, and I was like, wow, I want this iconic director to see my movie. So when I meet him, I'm going to bring a VHS tape.
Good thinking.
Right. I went in there, and I don't know if you remember that day, Fred, but I walked into your office, and I was like, well, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm really happy to meet you, and here's a movie I made. I think that's all I said. Do you remember that?
Pretty much. Yeah, I know. I very definitely remember that. I do.
I was intimidated.
Early 90s, I think.
I wish it was the early 90s. It was 1988, 89.
Oh, is that right?
Assault of the Party Nerds came out in 89. So it was probably like late 1988 when I brought in that tape and met you for the first time. And so you had already, I mean, you were kind of running a certain part of Hollywood, kind of went through Fred Ray. I mean, you were a driving force. You were working nonstop.
That was, I remember that time because David had taken a small office in the building that American International Pictures had used to be in. It was on Selma. It's the corner of Selma and there was a very famous nightclub in the same building called, I think it was called the China Club. And it was in the same building, and David had a small front room and then an editing room. And right next to him was a much bigger space that had a reception room and a editing room and then a big office. And we used to film in there too, as you know.
Of course.
But yeah, it was the old American International Pictures where Sam Arkoff and James Nicholson used to be.
And his kid, what was his kid's name?
Lou
Arkoff. Oh man, what a doofus.
So for all of our viewers and listeners, take us back before we met, before Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. I definitely want to get into this. I want to talk about your book, which is fantastic. Thank you. Autobiographical book, Hellbent for Hollywood, Director's Journey by Fred Ray. So not to give away everything in the book, but I mean, so I met you at that point, but you had already had, a certain amount of success. So what started it? I think our producer has a clip from one of your earlier films. Why don't we take a look at that?
Let me take a look here and see what you
Brain Leeches. This isn't this isn't. I can't even see these images. So Fred? What was Brain Leeches, and when and where did you shoot that?
You know, that was a film that I made when I worked at PBS, and they
Whoa.
had retired. You know, before the days of an easy movable video camera, they would record all their interviews in the field on 16 millimeter, and they used a sort of 16 millimeter film that had a mag stripe along the side of the film, like Super 8 sound, and they would record the sound right onto the film. And you would interview somebody, process the film, and throw it up at 11 o'clock at night, and it would have the sound right on the film itself. And they retired their camera when they got a new one. So when I first went to work at the station, they had this old camera, and in the fridge was this black and white mag stripe 16 millimeter film that was hideously expired. And I said, hey, could I borrow that camera on the weekend? And they said yes. And I said, could I have this expired black and white film? I mean, who was shooting on black and white? That was usually used for high school football games. You know, the coaches would shoot the field and then watch the game later. And they gave it to me. And I thought, well, here's my chance. If I never had another chance to make a feature film, this was it. And I took that camera on the weekends, and I took that expired film, and I made this terrible movie for $298 called The Brain Leeches. It was awful, but I made it, and I didn't care.
And
it was just do.
And I'm having a feeling it brought back more than $298 over the years.
You know, I sold the distribution rights for $1,800, and I thought, Fred, that's okay. You know, you did all right.
Yeah.
But in those days, you could probably buy two used cars for $1,800.
Well, you know what? I saw it as a success, and the people vanished years later, and I had a 3/4 inch of it, so I went ahead and put it on a Blu-ray, one of my Blu-rays as an extra. With one of the other films I made in Florida, so as to preserve its hideousness. And so it's still there to embarrass me all these years later. It was awful, but, at the time, everybody says you have to start somewhere and you have to learn as you go. And, it was a learning experience, and I certainly wasn't unhappy that I did it.
I totally get it. And so, what happened next? Because I know, as far as your directing career goes, what happened after that?
Well, I felt like I wanted to make. I went into TV because I thought I could never make it as a filmmaker. Why would any kid in the middle class in Florida with no real education? My mother kind of ran off when I was a teenager, still at home, and my father, as soon as I hit legal age, my father gave me the boot as well. And so I didn't have much of an education, and I didn't, I was able. They gave student loans out fairly quickly back then, so I got one of those, and I went to broadcast engineering school, and I got out with a first class FCC license, and I went into. They helped you get a job, and I did at public broadcasting as an engineer, and I kind of thought that would make me happy. I knew I would never be Roger Corman, or I'd never be a filmmaker, but I thought if I worked in a TV station, maybe that would satisfy me. But you know how it is. If you really don't chase after your real dreams, you'll never truly be happy. And once I got in there, it paid the bills, and I had a baby, and it was a low end sort of job, even though I was an engineer. It was one of the highest paid jobs in television there. It still didn't do the trick. So I was constantly trying to be a filmmaker on the weekends. And the Golden Age Olympics came to town. And the Grand Marshal was Buster Crabbe, the old serial star from Flash Gordon. And Tarzan.
It's no use, Flash.
Yes. So I went over to the set, and I wished I worked in the camera department, but I wasn't. I was an engineer. So I went to the camera department, and I told the 16 millimeter guy there, I said, listen, I will volunteer to be one of the camera guys for the Golden Age Olympics this weekend, if you want. And the guy said, oh yeah, because they had a Canon Scopic. And I don't know if you know the Canon Scopic 16 millimeter camera, but it has the ability to turn the dial of the frames per second. You can turn it live while it's going. So you can go from 24 frames a second, you can go up to 30, 40, 50, 60 frames a second while it's running. You turn the knob. So that's what and it's almost like a Super 8 camera, but it's 16 millimeter. We used it on Dinosaur Island as a second camera. And so I would shoot the old people. There's the Golden Age Olympics. It's old people, and they'd be running. Then they'd hit that mark, and then they'd do the long jump, into the sand. So I would watch them, and as they hit that that board, I would turn that dial. So as they'd be running full speed, and then they'd hit that dial, and then they'd go into slow motion, all in one shot. And that's what I was doing for these guys. But I really did it so I could meet Buster Crabbe, and I felt so much like Ed Wood. And I went up to Buster Crabbe, and I said, "Sir," I said, "I have this film coming up, and you would be perfect for the part of the sheriff." Now, I had no film. I had no idea. I was,
right.
And he said, "Oh," but he was very interested.
Very cool.
And he gave me his number. And I went away, and I said, and I felt just like Ed Wood, ahead of Ed Wood's time, of course. And I said, well, I don't have a movie, I don't have a budget, but I have a star. I have Buster Crabbe.
There
just
you
like
go.
Dale Lugosi.
And it's funny you brought up using that camera on Dinosaur Island, but we didn't really. In between the time I gave you Assault of the Party Nerds and Dinosaur Island happened, I don't know that we spoke, and I don't think I ever heard what you thought of that film. And this is a friendly show, so if you think anything of the film, I hope it's okay at this point. But you called me up and said, I'm making this movie called Dinosaur Island, and I remember I went in and met you at the Nob Hill house that had that couch I passed out on many times after all those martini parties you used to have. But that's when we had become friends. And you handed me this script, and he's like, well, there's this part, it's kind of the Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd part. You might be good for it. So I took the script home and read it, and I was thinking, oh, this sounds like a blast. I'd really be good for it. I hope he's going to call me. And then I didn't know you were kind of like being gracious, like, well, if you're interested. But I thought I was just reading it and you were going to tell me if I had an audition or if whatever. And I just called and they're like, well, we're shooting in 3 days. Are you going to take that part? And I said, yeah, I'm in. So little did I know we're using that same camera. But before we get back to all the great times I'm blessed to have had with you from all the gigs you gave me, you were making, it was probably like before Dinosaur Island, that you were working with some other Carradines, right? You made a movie with John and
David.
Yep. What was the what was the one you did with John?
Well, I met him in 1975, before I even went into television, on a movie called Shockwaves in Florida with an actor named Peter Cushing.
Wow.
And it was made in Key Biscayne. And I'm not sure how old he was, but it was 10 years before I would, see him again. And he was the boat captain, and there was Nazi zombies that rose up out of the ocean.
Wow.
From the ocean.
Look for that, guys. Look for
floor.
that.
Oh no, that's a great movie. And I think it's on Tubi if you want to check it out. And then years later, I got a chance to do this movie called The Tomb, which was a great little movie. And I made it for about $185,000 in 14 days. And it was my first real break, because I'd made Scalps and I'd made Biohazard, and those films respectively was $15,000 budget, and then Biohazard was $60,000.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I met a guy who had bought Biohazard for some foreign territory, and he'd paid $60,000 just for that one territory. When he found that out, he said, I'll make a movie with you, and he gave me $185,000 to do The Tomb. So I did The Tomb, and it was a big success for them. It made like $3.5 million or something.
Wow.
For them. Yeah. So the next thing I know, I had $1 million, and I made Armed Response with David Carradine and Lee Van Cleef playing. Van Cleef was playing David's father. Now that's where I met Bobby.
That's right.
Bobby came in, and he was offered the role of play David's brother.
Did I
Bobby
do it?
came in and turned me down.
I turned you down?
He turned me down. And Bobby came in and he said he wanted to do his own stunt driving. he wanted to drive the cars. There was a lot of car crashes and stuff in this movie. And they said, no, he couldn't drive the car. And Bobby called me. He said, Fred, he goes, I'm going to call you. I called you directly because they're treating, I'll never forget this. He said, because they're treating you like a mushroom. Because they're keeping you in the dark and feeding you shit. because this is why I'm not taking this movie. He goes, I'd like to do it because I could play David's brother. He goes, but I want to drive the stunt cars myself. And he goes, they said no. And he says, so I'm not going to do it.
Like any reasonable producer would.
Yeah, sorry about that, Fred.
Well, I'll never forget it. But we made up for it.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Hey, are we sure that that's the right trailer for The Tomb? We should take a look. Let's take a look and see what The Tomb.
And we're willing to fight against overwhelming odds to get it.
Yeah, that's not very representative of the movie, but that is the footage.
But back in those days, in the trailer, all they did was put the action.
Rarer than riches.
Yeah.
Carried a price that would leave the living to envy the dead. Enter a bizarre world of supernatural powers, an incredible realm of forbidden desires, and unspeakable revenge.
That's okay. That's fine.
Once the terror is unleashed, there may be no power on earth that can stop it. John Carradine, Cameron Mitchell, and Sybil Danning dare
What a
you to
cast.
join them on a journey into hell on earth.
But
Wow.
I mean, John Carradine, Lee Van Cleef,
And Sybil Shepherd.
and Sybil
Shepherd,
I mean-
yes.
Sybil Danning.
Sybil Danning, sorry.
Sybil Danning. Sybil. What an amazing, amazing cast. And
It was you know what? It was a fun movie. Why, since they have an HD master of it that they run on television, why they won't put it on Blu-ray or DVD? It's never been on DVD or Blu-ray,
right.
and they won't let me have it. I've offered a lot of money to license it, so I don't know what the deal is with it.
It's always kind of a weird thing. As you know, we've talked about it. I got really lucky because Virgin High and Hot Under the Collar are in the MGM library. And after years of correspondence, I was able to get the rights to put out the Blu-rays. But what's driving me nuts is I have these gorgeous HD transfers from the original 35 millimeter. But if you go on Tubi, where most people are watching the movies, they have this horrible 4:3 extraction that isn't,
Right.
and is with booms in every other shot because we made it like a film, you know. It's like, but anyway, that's a whole nother subject. So, hey, what about
Yeah.
Cyclone? Did you pull that up? Because I mean, these films were epic, and these are all, you know. Let's take a look at that. Because in Cyclone, because you did a bunch of films with, that was your mostly Cinetel days, right?
Cyclone was the follow-up after Armed Response.
Right. Martin Landau.
Starring Heather Thomas and Martin Landau.
That was a great movie.
Cyclone. Prepare for the ride of your life. It'll blow you away. Cyclone. The ultimate team, the woman and the shoe.
Nice.
That's some nice car stuff, Fred.
And were those explosions practical, or did you?
Oh
use the
yeah,
footage?
no. Everything in there was, you know, that was the days where it was just all Sparkletts water bottles full of gasoline and wrapped in primer cords.
The good old days, right?
Yeah, everything was practical. You know, when was the last time you strapped a body, you know, one of those body hits on people with the blood bag under their clothes?
Oh, remember we used to wear those all the time, right?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
I
they
love
would
them.
burn. They would burn sometimes.
Yeah, the last time
You
I
know,
had one of those on.
A squib.
I let them put them on me a few times. Yeah, I pulled
Squib
the
him
gun
up.
out, and then they blow out and hit your own self in the arm. Yeah.
The last time I had one of those on, Fred, they put it on inside out, and the thing exploded into me. That was
Oh,
not
dear,
good.
no.
That was not good.
Showing all this sort of, you know, retro stuff, which is amazing. But I mean, Fred, you know, you've been doing this for a minute, and you've made everything from, well, this early action and horror and whatever exploitation genres that we all enjoy, all the way up through family and Christmas films.
Well, yeah, you know, and it's like when I first started, I thought maybe that I was going to just do horror and sci-fi, because that's what I was interested in. And then it was only like right after The Tomb that I got Armed Response, and I realized that you couldn't say, oh, I'm only going to do this. You had to be ready to, chase your paycheck, And so that was the thing. You had to be ready to be whatever type of filmmaker that people wanted to hire. And it wasn't that difficult. Because I made a children's movie, Invisible Mom, and then all of a sudden it became this huge hit. It was like the #1 most rented video in America, and all of a sudden, oh, now you're a children's filmmaker, and I was like, well, I didn't set out to do that. I just did the best job I could.
Right.
And because you've made kids films, and then they've been wildly successful, and people went, oh, gee, I thought he did this.
Right.
And it's don't put me in a category, please.
So is that when we did The Kid with X-Ray Eyes during the
Yes,
children
that was
era?
yes. Once I did this one film, then of course, then Roger Corman comes along, and you get a 3-picture deal, and then you make Mom Can I Keep Her, Kid with the X-Ray Eyes, Invisible Mom 2, then Invisible Dad, and then and all of a sudden they see you in this category. Then you make Inner Sanctum, with Tanya Roberts or something, and then that becomes the #1 most rented video in America, and all of a sudden the Wall Street Journal puts it on the front cover. B movie makes A movie money, and I'm out renting Ron Howard's Backdraft.
Right.
Now you're the erotic thriller guy, and then they're all coming at you with that, and it's like you're just really doing the best you can, with whatever material comes along, and here and there you have these sort of movies that stand out above some of the rest, and then all of a sudden everybody says, oh, well, that's the guy that does this, and it's kind of crazy, but you can't just say I'm going to do westerns, or I'm going to do horror films, or you're going to sit home and not work.
Yeah,
and when you have kids, that's really not an option.
Well, even if you don't have kids, you still like to eat and have a roof over your head, and the main thing I think all of us like to do is go to work, right? And just now, as I'm looking at you, I'm having all kinds of flashbacks of all these different kinds of movies that we did together. Boy, the one I would remember also is like right after I met my wife, you put me in a movie as a co-pilot, and then we were going to crash or something, and you had the idea, like, we'll put a picture of you and your wife up there, right? And then, like, right before I die, I look at that picture.
But you see these films, and you just, it's like some kind of time capsule, because a lot of those films, I don't know how you are, but I don't spend a lot of time watching my old films.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Occasionally, if a Blu-ray comes out of something and I haven't seen it in 10, 20 years or whatever, I may pop it in. And because you go, and I'll go in my house, I'll say, oh, I got this Blu-ray from Germany, and I haven't seen this in, 10, 20 years. Do anybody want to look at a few minutes of it? And everybody's like, maybe. I don't know.
Then you put it on, and it's better.
Like,
and it's better.
Nobody cares. No one cares.
That is not true. You put it on, and then it's better than you remember.
For me, but for the people in, like, my own kids, like, coming up in about a week is my new Christmas movie that I shot earlier this year.
Right.
A Royal Christmas Ballet.
Right.
And I will tell you that the Christmas movie I made last year, it came up on, I don't know what, it was Christmas Eve. I think it premiered on Christmas Eve. I think it was called A Royal Christmas Holiday, whatever it was called.
Right.
Oh, we set the TiVo. We were all set. We didn't watch it. No one here at the house was interested in watching it as it premiered on nationwide national television network. It's sitting on the TiVo queue, never watched.
Well,
no one
happened.
in this household ever
What happened?
watched.
And also, I think part of it is how all of us as filmmakers who have been blessed to be involved in quite a few movies, even like, I'm shocked. I go to my IMDb and it says 105 productions. I'm like, whoa. I definitely haven't seen 105 things I've been involved in. But also for the public, it's not like in the old days when if you had a movie on HBO, I mean, a lot of people watched it because it was kind of the only premium channel, and there was only like 5 or 6 other channels you could watch stuff on. So everything's been kind of fragmented. right? It's not as important. I mean, it was even important when a movie got released on video, you know? It was a big deal.
Well, you used to have friends over, you'd have people over, you'd have cocktails over, you watch your movie.
Right.
Premiere.
Remember, you know, like
Now,
like with some of my your movies more so than mine, but when like Moto Kids or Pops, when it came out on DVD or VHS, it was DVD. You walk into Blockbuster and there would be like a whole wall of your movie the week it came out because everyone was going to rent it, right? And that kind of excitement and charm of everything, maybe that's kind of gone away. But
yeah, now I can guarantee you that when my film shows on the 22nd of December, not one of my children will watch it. Period. They'll never watch it, ever.
Well, you know, there's a thing happens though with kids that grow up in the business because you know my kids grew up on set. I know.
That's
imagine
right.
Bobby's grew up on set. I tell this famous story that you know when I was making Call of the Wild, I'm making Call of the Wild in Montana with Christopher Lloyd and Veronica Cartwright and I mean just an all-star cast.
Tim Bottoms.
Tim Bottoms, and it goes on, and Jaleel White, and there's a scene where there's a few little kids in a scene, and I was just thinking, you know, and I've been out in Montana for like a few weeks already. I'm missing my wife and the kids, and I call, and I was like, hey, do you kids want to come out? There's a scene with a couple little kids in the, you know, in the snow, and Christopher Lloyd, and you know, they don't know who he is. They're like, no, we'll see you when you get home. Now they regret it. Now they wish they were in the movie, but let's Max, you pulled up the Capitol Conspiracy. Let's take a look at this because this is our good pal Don the Dragon Wilson. I mean, this is from another era where there were video stars. There were stars that could get movies funded with a decent budget just for home video.
You are to eliminate them with extreme prejudice.
You'll meet your partner in Los Angeles.
Any questions?
When do I begin?
Right now.
Federal agent Jared Maddox. Given a mission he wasn't meant to survive.
We have a renegade agent in arm that's putting the entire company at risk for exposure. I just want you to close him out.
Understood. I think I know where he's headed.
Watch yourself. This guy's dangerous.
We have only one objective, and that is to retire him immediately.
It will be my pleasure.
The Capitol Conspiracy.
The CIA, back in 1965.
They got a top secret black op.
Together, they're forced to fight the system they trusted most.
Of this operation.
We never meant to harm you. We only meant to help you.
Don the Dragon Wilson and Alexander Keith. The Capitol Conspiracy.
How much longer until they completely unravel? How much longer until we all do?
Well, there you go. And now that is some great freaking action. And my favorite sequence in that, which I'm most amazed by as a fellow director, is that train sequence.
Yeah, that was something. That was something because the top of that train is curved. It's not flat. So you're constantly, while it's moving, because we're on top of that while it's moving, I was constantly thinking, we're going to fall. All you got to do is fall. You're going to roll right off of it one way or the other. But.
And if you do, you're going to kind of maybe like, you're not going to break a lot of things. You're going to die.
Yeah, it was a long way down.
And Don was hanging on. Was he tied to something or?
Yeah. Well, when we were on top, we had straps. They had straps running down their pant legs to the ground, and because every time the camera changed, you had to unstrap the tripod, and they had to stop, and then everyone had to. They had to unbuckle everybody, and then move everybody, and then buckle everybody, including the tripods, and it seemed to take forever to do it just to be safe, but. There's some pretty weird shit in there that I did, and nobody really thinks about it. There's a scene where Don runs at a car that's driving at him, and then he does a forward somersault onto the hood of the moving car, and then up onto the roof, and then down onto the back, and then he slides down and sits on the back of the car and shoots the guy in the car behind it. And the way I did it is I looked at it and I said, you know what? I said, if the car is shot in slow motion, there's almost no way to know how fast or slow the car was driving. So I said, hey, how about the car goes 3 to 4 miles an hour? Can you do it? And he said, yeah, if it's moving 3 or 4 miles an hour in that parking garage. I said, great, I'll shoot it in slow motion and no one will know how fast the car's going. So the car's coming at you really fast, and all of a sudden in slow motion, you see Don jump up, run toward it and jump up and roll up on it and roll down on it. It's in the trailer. And it looks great because you can't tell how fast. And then there's a scene where he drops down in front of a wall and the car slams into the wall and the wheels stop just short of hitting Don. And I cut the front of the car off. I cut it off physically and put 2 handles on it, took the engine out, so it almost is like a shopping cart. And we just stood about 2 feet away from the wall, and Don would drop, and we'd just push the front of the car into the wall. And so as he drops, you just see this car come and hit the wall, and it looks for all the world that this car slammed head on into the wall, just the wheels just stopping short of running him over. It was great, and I never get any credit for this.
No,
well, you're
really
getting credit for it now. This is the stuff.
You see it, and you just kind of go, shit, man, that looks dangerous.
That was badass. But I mean, even so, that's the stuff that we love, and that's the magic of it all, and that's what you're such a genius at.
Hey, so
well, that's
Fred,
what a little bit of money will get you, because I think that movie was what, $1.3 million. Right. That's what having a little bit of money allows you to get another car that looks just like the car in the movie and cut the front off and take the engine out and put two handles on it. You know?
So I'm trying to ask Fred a question about the stunt coordinator. Did you use the same stunt coordinator in all your movies?
Not always, but they were all interrelated. Like one stunt coordinator will hire his friends so that when they get a job, they'll hire them. Okay. So if Bob Bragg was the stunt coordinator, he would hire Pat Statham and Cole McKay and those guys on his show. So if we hired Cole McKay, then he would get Pat Statham and Bob Bragg, and if you hired Pat Statham, so there was a group of them.
So you had some continuity in the stunt department.
Yeah, the strangest thing on that movie, though, is the guy driving the car in the parking garage. I think his name was Gary McCarty or something. He was the guy that came on that Robert Blake trial and claimed that he was the guy that Robert Blake tried to contract to murder his wife. He was the big witness in the Robert Blake murder trial. And it was the guy driving the car in the parking garage there.
Wow.
The stunt.
Fred, you've just reminded me, because all of these conversations we're having is that it's totally off topic, but Vice Girls, Lana Clarkson, the Phil Spector murder trial that I directed Lana Clarkson in her last real movie. And
you did that?
I directed Vice Girls, yeah, which,
wow.
And to brag about another story is that when I met Quentin Tarantino, he told me it was one of his favorite films.
Wow.
But when that all went down, then I was getting all these people calling me about Lana Clarkson. And it's amazing how all these different worlds collide. But going back to the important stuff, the type of filmmaking you were doing, you were talking about that $1.3 million budget. Like if they told a guy like you or me to make a movie like that today, they'd probably tell us we have to make it for $250,000 or $300,000, and then only maybe would it make some money, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. To be honest with you, we're paid less today than we were in 1987. But look at all the pieces of the market that have been pulled away. I mean, they used to sell VHS tapes to be rented only. Like a VHS tape was sold for $90.
Yeah, I still have. I have those sell sheets from my movie, $79.95 for the VHS.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
And so if they sold, 10,000 tapes, that was a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah,
that went all over the world, and then after that there was the television and all those other sort of things. So
there is no foreign market anymore. I told a guy not long ago, I said, look, I'm used to small sales overseas, but I'm not used to zero. And that's what you have now. Zero sales overseas for a low independent product now.
But somehow,
I mean, there's no direct to video anymore. There's no such thing.
Right, but somehow we're still doing it. You're still doing it, and I know people have
Well,
asked.
that's it. You have like we were just Bobby and I were talking about. You have to be able to go into television and make women's thrillers for Lifetime and I mean these Christmas movies. I think I'm up to 20 Christmas women, and they're all female centric. I mean, if you were to go back 20 some years and say that one day people would say that Fred Ray knew what the American housewife longed for, you'd have been laughed out of the room.
That's right.
But people do believe today and are willing to invest their money in the idea that I know what the average American housewife is looking for.
Well, you do. I mean, you know, pal, with all due respect, there's been a few American housewives in your household. So if you don't know, then who does?
This. I've explored the inner psyche of the American housewife more than a few times.
Yeah, but that's only so you could learn how to make stories about them.
Right, but you make some of the best of them, and you know nobody gets more bang for their buck than if I needed to hire somebody to make a Christmas movie, it would be you. In fact, I remember when I was on another film, and then a company needed to get somebody to make a movie, and I said, well, the only guy I would hire to make a movie if it wasn't me is Fred Ray, and I don't remember which movie it is you went to go make, but it worked out for both of us because we were both working at the same time.
Yes.
So you can't pick a favorite. Like, you know, people have say to me, like, what's a favorite movie you've done? Or I want to go watch something you did. Or what's your favorite song that you wrote? But it's always kind of the last one. But for you, I mean, I don't know how many movies it's up to. Though I know some others may claim they've directed more movies than you. I refuse to believe it because there's different definitions of movie, right?
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite? What are some of? I'm not going to tell you to pick one, but like, give me a top 3 or a top 5.
Well, you know, I always tell people that some of my favorite films are based on the experience of making the film.
100%, absolutely.
Being with the people I made them with, you know, the experience may not actually be the finished product as much as it was the friends I worked with, you know, and the experience that I had. And like, I always liked that river rafting movie that I did called Eyewitness, because, you know, I was outdoors and I was like working around the rapids and the river and the beautiful locations, and that they were my friends in the cast and the crew, you know, Tim Abel and, you know, Ted Monty and Danny Bucco and Bridget Brana, and I just had a great time. I had a great time making that movie, and I loved the movie itself, Perry King, and I just had a really good time. And I liked the way the film turned out because I got to write it myself, so it was my script, and I was pretty much kind of left alone to do what I wanted to do. And I felt the same way about Hatfields and McCoys. You know, I got to write it, and there was a lot of me, and you know, and a lot of my own sort of, you know, history, hillbilly philosophy, yes, in that film, and it was a low budget film, and you know, if you want to look at it from that aspect, you know, it was no long riders, but from my own personal experience of having made the film with my friends and having my own sort of head about it, I really enjoyed that movie. Armed Response was always one of my favorites, you know, because that was kind of a turning point for me as a filmmaker. That's what turned the page between, you know, $100,000 movie and $1 million movie, and you know, being on billboards and posters everywhere and full page ads and, you know, the Los Angeles Times and stuff, and that sort of made everybody kind of say, oh, who's that guy? Let's give him a call.
Right.
So, you know, films like that. I mean, I enjoyed A Prince for Christmas. That was kind of my Christmas movie that, again, kind of broke through the barrier, which made people like Pierre David and people like that start calling me, and it's kind of hung in there as a holiday favorite for people, you know. So, and I got that big train that everybody said, you know, I shouldn't try for, you know.
Right.
And I went ahead and I wouldn't give up on it till I had it, and it made all the difference in the world. So in that movie, so you know, films kind of like that. You know, some films, mostly it's personal for me. You know, a film that may just be what seems to be just another movie to them, you know, is a personal thing for me.
Yeah, because a lot of the times we are making a movie just because it's a job, and sometimes we're making the movie because it's what we want to make. And I can't tell you. I want to talk about your book again, because this book is freaking phenomenal, because it's honest, it's informational. Like I've now recommended it to like 3 or 4 wannabe, you know, aspiring filmmakers. You know, I was like, well, I think the first thing you might want to do is read Fred's book, because first of all, it's really engaging and informational, but it's also humorous, and it's also brutally honest. You know.
Well, I didn't want to tell a book that was just like, and then I made this film, and then I made that film. You know what I mean? I had things I kind of just wanted to get out of my system. And, you know, my hospital horror story kind of drove it initially.
Right.
Because I realized at the time I started it, I didn't really know if I had any real time left. And so, you know, I started it as an interview book with Steve Latshaw, because I didn't have the ability to type at that point. So Steve helped me tremendously, and we transcribed all that stuff. And then I realized that I could almost took the transcriptions and turn them into a book. So I rerouted it that way, and I was happy, you know, in as much. And I thought, well, I didn't know if people would like it so much, because it does cover a certain amount of my own personal life. But I felt like that had a lot to do with the way things turned out. Right. And at the same time, though, I thought it also showed meticulously, almost, all the steps I took to get from a guy who had no business being a filmmaker to all the steps it took to get to here, you know, and how I got the money to do things, and how I put it all together. And if you really wanted to be a filmmaker, maybe this was a fairly decent guide. You know, it's not a how-to, but I don't think how-to guides work.
Right, but it shows what it takes. And I mean, you know, you are the king of self-deprecation, like saying, I had no business being a filmmaker, but I mean, you were born a filmmaker. You've been a filmmaker probably since you could hold a camera, because you started holding a camera kind of as soon as you could. And you personify all that. And the main thing that I thought I went through a lot until I read your book. I had a really lovely middle-class childhood. I had mostly the support of my parents. Although they did question it once they saw the first couple films I made. But, you know, as a parent now.
Your first feature film is so much better than mine. Yours looked like a real movie. It looked like a real film.
Well,
my first couple films didn't even look like movies.
Well, I think I just had the advantage of, I was in LA, I had started to work as an actor, and I got to ask somebody, how do you do that? And this is kind of an interesting thing, you know, is how did I make a movie? Well, I watched Dave Dakota do it, and I had seen a bunch of movies, and he said, well, you call Howard Wexler, and he comes with most of the equipment, and then you need a sound man. And my longtime colleague and buddy, Michael Becker's father, was a sound man, and sure thing you know, we started making a movie. So I think I had a leg up. Like I didn't realize until I read this book, I didn't realize how much of a leg up I had. I kind of felt like I grabbed myself by the bootstraps, and I was struggling, and I ate, you know, I lived on top ramen and tuna fish for the first couple of years trying to get going in this business. But you really did it, and there are, you know, there's different kinds of success, but I don't think there's just about anybody out there that can claim the amount of success that you've had, and the number of genres that you have, and the literally tens of millions of people that are watching your movies all the time. And that's
Well, that's
something.
kind of you to say.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying it. It's the freaking truth. Because all I know is if my movies are up on YouTube, you know, channels, monetized YouTube channels, not when they pirate. Stop pirating people's movies, please. I mean, Fred and I talk once a week, tell each other, oh, this guy's ripping off your movie. He got 15,000 views on YouTube. But if my movies have tens of millions of views, and I've made maybe 25 or 30 movies, and I don't know, what is your total now, Fred?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really think about it.
Hey Maxwell, why don't you IMDb Fred and see how many movies?
Yeah, IMDb Fred
and see how many movies he made.
And I want to. The public needs to know. I want to know. Fred needs.
I don't think it's accurate anyway.
I know. That's
because I got films that I made and that aren't on there, and I got films I didn't make and they are on there.
They used to make you put different names on movies because they didn't want the distributors to know that you were making all the movies.
Yes, yeah. That same thing with Capital Conspiracy. It says Ed Raymond on there.
Yeah, but
everybody
there you go.
says,
so go back up
who's
there,
Ed
Maxwell.
Raymond? Ed Raymond is the guy who didn't make the children's movie.
Where it said director 167 movies directing. You on record, you got me beat by only like 120 movies. And more than most of them are freaking great.
Dude, every once in a while though, I always tell people you can't phone it in because you have to get up in the morning and go stand somewhere for 12 hours a day and tell people what's going to happen next. But I will say every once in a while, I actually, you and I'm sure we went and did a film where we didn't read the script before we got to the set. I know I did one or two where I actually just looked at the sides in the morning.
I think Fred, I honestly think that was a TV series for Showtime, and I think we were both on it.
I think we were, and I looked at.
And it was at the Roger Corman Lumber Yards. I was directing every other week, and they were shot on film, and I would get there in the morning and get the breakfast burrito and read the pages, and sometimes I didn't understand what the hell it was.
Do you know Michael Goy?
Of course, the legendary, the great Michael Goy, who shot my film, The Bike Squad, which was, going back, really was a huge leg up for me because we made the Bike Squad. We met on The Bike Squad, and it was a $250,000 film, and there's this pretty big awards show on Animal Planet called the Genesis Awards, and that year, and it's a televised awards show, right? That year, the best feature film was Finding Nemo, and the best TV movie was The Bike Squad.
Wow.
And if you want to talk about Hollywood, that's another thing where my phone rang the next day. Hey, Richard, why didn't you go to the Genesis Awards last night to accept the award for The Bike Squad? The writer was there. And I said, well, nobody freaking told me. Like the producer didn't tell me, the producer who had brought the right. So anyway, I called the Genesis Awards. I was like, hey, I'm Richard Gabai. Why didn't you come? I was like, nobody told me. I didn't even know, but I do have it's hanging on the wall over there. They did give me the award, but yeah, sometimes we make these little things and boom, But Michael Goy, you were talking about him. He's a genius.
Well, I covered for him. He quit, and I literally walked in, and I would just get the sides in the morning, and I would simply read what was being filmed that day. And I would just say, camera goes over here. I mean, I would go through the whole thing. I never quite understood what the whole plot of the thing was, but I took over for Michael Goy, who was directing.
Right, and and he's a phenomenal director.
Sexy Urban Legends. It was called Sexy Urban Legends.
There you go. Which was not the show on the Roger Corman Studios. I forgot what that was called, but
I told somebody, I was, how they say you have lucid dreaming where you wake up in the morning, you're kind of half asleep and half awake. A few weeks ago, I woke up in that morning, for whatever it was, I remembered that you wanted to go and meet some people about a future job, and you called me one day and you said, Fred, could you come down to Roger Corman's studio and direct for a few hours in the afternoon so I can go to this job interview?
Oh, yeah.
I went, okay, and I came over, and you were standing there, and the scene was being filmed. There was a scene being filmed, I think, when I first came over to see you, and there's a girl, and she's doing a sort of a love scene, but she's standing by a huge globe of the world, and she's got her back to the actor, and she's spinning the globe, just idly spinning the globe, and the scene's being filmed, but you're over there talking to me, and you're like going, yeah, and then maybe tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 2 or whatever, and the scenes, then you looked over and you went, oh, cut, and I'm like, I'm dying.
Well, that was one of those.
So I came over, and it was a classroom scene,
right.
and you said, here's the page, here's where we are, I gotta go. And you said, I'll be back in a couple hours. I went, okay. And you ran off, and I looked at the page, and I looked at the DP, I don't know if it was Howard, I don't know who it was, but I went, camera goes over there.
Listen,
away we went.
I just knew, I wanted to, listen, we're always trying to get a better job. I needed to eat, and I knew that if Roger Corman walked in and saw you there, because there was so much production going on, it wasn't like he would have flinched, right?
No.
So I'm sure we met later. I bought you a couple of martinis, and we called it a fair deal. But talking about our business, though, Michael Goy, the great Michael Goy, one day he's directing Playboy TV, and then jumped to like 2 years ago, and Lady Gaga is thanking him for directing her episodes of American Horror Story that she won the Emmy for.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, all of us, there's no judgment. I mean, we're going to work. We're you're making Christmas movies now. You directed Playboy TV. You directed Westerns. You directed kind of almost musicals. And you're a freaking legend.
That's right, Fred. You're a legend, man.
Yeah.
Says Bobby Carradine.
The great Fred Olen Ray. Pal, thanks so much for joining us here. And I think that kind of wraps up another amazing episode of the Party Nerds Popcast, coming to you live from an undisclosed location high in the Hollywoodland Hills area of Los Angeles, California. And we will see you next time.